Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. On the program, we discuss issues in New Mexico agriculture. Joining us today to discuss this subject in depth is Rolando Flores Galarza, Dean of the College of Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences at New Mexico State University. Dean Flores Galarza will also share more about the academics, research, and outreach of the College of ACES at NMSU. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Anthony. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. A lot of exciting things happening in your college, a lot of new building, new facilities,
Correct.
Updated facilities.
Correct.
Can you share more about that exciting news?
Yeah, we had finished and two fantastic buildings in the college. One is the Food Safety and Security Center, and the other one is the Animal Nutrition and Feed Mill. Now, these are two state-of-the-art facilities in which are part of a block of activities that we're doing in the college. And I'm going to explain to you what is the impact of this in New Mexico and why we are so excited. So the first thing is that we have two new buildings, and these two new buildings reach this conclusion finally after over 15 years of the college wanting to have these facilities, which are critical for the education of the students in NMSU. And the areas of influence are very critical for agriculture in New Mexico. We are not only touching what it is, the ranching effect, the ranching result, which is beef and cattle and all these kind of products that are going to come out, but also all the chain of food, the food chain that it consists in these facilities. Go ahead.
We're in an international area here along the border. Food safety, obviously, a big concern in not only our region, but across the country. How can this facility really play a role in that area of food safety and security?
Yeah, absolutely. I was mentioning to you of the two buildings. One building has three major functions. One is the cattle processing, that it goes from the abattoir to this storefront, in which we are not only going to do research, but also the instruction of our students that are going to be able to go with the state-of-the-art knowledge to go and work in industry. The other component is a set of laboratories that are related to food safety and security. And this is critical because of the type of processes that we have in agriculture. When we talk about safety, it's critical to have the state-of-the-art facilities. And we have that in these facilities. We not only have the microbiological studies and all the texture analysis, the components that will determine how the food is sensed by the individuals or the consumer, but we also have a lab that right now is working on testing wines for New Mexico wine industry. So this is very impactful. And especially when we look at where we are located, as you said, we are the land-grant university closer to a border. We are 40 minutes from the busiest animal border crossing in the world, Santa Teresa. So all these issues and the training of the labor force training and our students in food safety is critical for New Mexico, but for the U.S. and the U.S. consumer.
Certainly having NMSU being able to provide that service and research is something that a lot of folks at the university and in our region are interested in. Can you share with us a little bit more about the role that New Mexico State University and your college is going to play with food safety and security?
Yeah. Well, we are the land-grant University of New Mexico. And the land-grant started with two major colleges, let's put it that way, agriculture and engineering. So we are true to the concept of land-grant by doing teaching, research, and extension. When we work with these products that the agriculture produces, like for example, here where we are in Doña Ana County, the largest, the county that produces more pecans, for example. So how can we work with the pecan growers, not only in making more efficient use of water, efficient use of the land, the better crops, protection of the crops, but also what other products in addition to the nut are we going to be able to do for New Mexico? That's one example on pecans. For example, in terms of beef, of cattle, how we can have our researchers working and identifying the best meat cuts from the breeds of cattle that we produce here. And in terms of chili, what type of products do we have from Chile? And when you look at all these agricultural products that we have in New Mexico, there is always the important thing is the production and the generation of value added.
Yeah.
And when we take our products and they are sent outside of the state, surprisingly enough, we buy those products, the finished products produced with those raw materials back in the state. And that differential between what we sell the product and we buy the product, that's the value added, and it stays in another state. So one of our goals in the college is to develop do research so we can develop more value added that stays in New Mexico.
And you mentioned pecans, you mentioned cattle, you mentioned Chile.
Yep.
All of those do depend on water.
Absolutely.
Can you share with us where water research is right now in your department and some of the perhaps things that you may be hopeful about with the research being done in your department? Because it's such a major concern for folks in our region.
Absolutely. The water efforts at the university are not only concentrated in the College of ACES, my college. They are also, a lot of those are done in engineering, and this, we have a total of about 120 scientists in NMSU working in water. And that is, if you talk about priority of issues in New Mexico, water is number one. So our agronomists, our horticulturists are working in developing new varieties, let's say, of chili, of varieties of other type of products that will be more adapt to drought conditions. By this adaptation, we are not only trying to look at how do we continue the production of those products that are important for New Mexico, but how we are using less water, because there is not being more water. However, there are some researchers that are working with produced water and trying to see how we can clean that water that can be used in agriculture. But that is a big challenge that we have in front.
What are some of the steps that you think farmers and folks in the region are going to have to take in the next 50 years to address the major challenges?
Well, a lot of the stuff depends on what technologies we are able to bring and to make the farmers and ranchers aware of what are those technologies. We have technologies that not only, for example, we have been importing technologies, like for example from Israel, to working in the dry lands with this better utilization of water. And we have some tests that are going on right now in Leyendecker, in one of our science centers. In another science center like in Clovis, we are working with different alternative crops within the same ring of irrigation that will preserve the water better. So there is a lot of avenues on this, and that's why it's so important that our work in water is number one. And we need to work along with the engineers in the College of Engineering in water utilization. So this is not just one department that is going to work on this. Is the genetics, is the agronomic processes, the type of cultures that are done, and the College of ACES is critical on this through the extension. Because, go ahead.
Yeah, and I want to hear a little bit more about that. And it's going to take a lot of collaboration to meet this great challenge of water in our region, to continue, with being able to be a hub of agriculture and many lucrative products right now, like pecans. I'm sure there are some farmers who have some big concerns. So what are your conversations like with, say, pecan farmers right now on the future of their industry, and how much do you talk with them from our area?
Well, we have extension specialists and extension agents that are working directly with our farmers and ranchers and in these conversations. And the first thing that we do is bring up to speed all the latest technologies that are coming out. What do we have new? We have scientists that are working in new techniques for plant propagation, but also, like I said, in terms of developing new varieties that are going to be more resistant to live or to grow in drought conditions. But going back to your point, as an NMSU, for me, NMSU number one research point should be water. Because water is not only for plant growth. Agriculture uses, worldwide, agriculture uses 85% of the water available for potable water in the world. In New Mexico, we are about 88%. And why is that? Because we have less water available. And we also we not only have to do with the technology and that is in use of water in agriculture, but also with the legalities of the issue. Water legalities in New Mexico go back to the acequias, even way before the Spaniards arrived to our lands.
There's a lot of issues there when you're talking about water, and we've certainly reported on some of the fights that are going on with water in regards to rights between states and between countries. So there's a lot there that we could spend time talking about.
Absolutely.
But one thing that it is going to take is investment and funding, either at the state level or the federal level. So when you go and visit with state lawmakers in New Mexico, or perhaps federal lawmakers, to bring this concern to them, what are some of the points that you're addressing?
Well, the most important thing is the research that we're doing, and the people that is going to take that research to the farmers and ranchers. And that's what we are, right now we are asking for the next year, and a specialist in water conservation and water management that is going to be working in Artesia, in one of our science centers. So we're looking at that. The other thing is that like you said, the issue is extremely complex. There are many issues. And you just touched the point, which is why NMSU is so important on this. Because we are not only dealing with water usage in different agricultural processes and products, but also with water distribution between urban and rural areas, but also international. Rio Grande goes to here, and we are 40 minutes from the border, and we need to work in some of those things. Some of the industry, the dairy industry, depends on the water availability in New Mexico. So it is, if we look at water and we look at agriculture, these are two interrelated, completely dependent elements of the discussion and the conversation.
Farming and ranching, such a big part of New Mexico's history.
Correct.
When you're talking with ranchers, what are some of the concerns that they have? I know they obviously are concerned with water issues, but also about the drought and how it's impacting them, and also the industry in general.
Correct.
And how there's changes there and more competition. So what are some of the major concerns that you were hearing from ranchers in our state?
It varies because in some areas, depends on what area of the state, is, for example, the availability of the access to lands that are federally owned by ranchers to use it, and how their lifestyles depends on the use of these lands, and it is not for free. They pay and they use for that, but sometimes there is not a clear understanding of what is the impact that the lands available for ranching has on many families in New Mexico. The other component you mentioned, one of those which is very critical, is the fires that we have in New Mexico. Last year that we have these huge fires and how they impacted reforestation. But reforestation alone, if it is extremely important, and we are working on that with the New Mexico Reforestation Center right now, and is being funded, and we are the fiscal agent for this organization. We also have the revegetation component too, because we have pasture lands that need to be maintained, and they also keep water in the system. So it is a very complex thing, but we have, and we also have all the scientists and extension agents that work in this area with the farmers and ranchers.
One of the other concerns ranchers have shared with us is that there may not be enough processing facilities in the state. We live in a large state geographically when you're talking about land, and they did mention concerns about having to spend a lot of money on fuel to travel to different processing centers and transport cattle. Any plans in the future that your college can play a role in this?
Well, these new facilities, we will have the capability to process cattle from the beginning till the end. However, this is a very limited process. Let me give you an example. As we were talking, I did my studies and my previous work in the Midwest, in Kansas and Nebraska and in Iowa. Well, the production when you see the meat processing facilities in Kansas, they process 3,000 to 5,000 heads a day. We don't have that capability here. So expect that I don't think anyone is naive enough to expect that a large meat processing facility is going to come here. But what the options are is the development of niche markets for the cattle that is produced here. And we have several examples of ranchers that they identify places where they can meet their cattle, process their cattle, and sell their meats. So the college, we have several capabilities. First, train students that are going to be able to know hands-on how to process and oversee the safe processing of animals. And second, the capability of train the labor force in New Mexico. And we just did that last summer with a Stampede trainer labor force.
The new facility is also going to support a newly proposed PhD program.
Correct.
Can you share a little bit more about that and the opportunities that may present?
We are delighted to have the Board of Regents approve the PhD in food science. And this is critical for the development of the value-added agriculture industry in New Mexico. New Mexico is very unique. Its characteristics are special, and we need to address those. So a PhD, what does a PhD bring? Well, it brings individuals that are going to be working in research. It brings a hub for knowledge center that is going to attract not only future graduate students, but industry. And that's what we're looking for, developing the basics of a larger value-added industry in New Mexico.
The New Mexico Department of Agriculture is located here on campus.
Correct.
Having that type of connection with the State Department of Agriculture, how does that not only help your college, but the students who are doing research?
Well, it's a symbiotic relationship because For an MDA, they depend on what the students that we produce, depends on many of the research that we do. We are the research arm of the state in agriculture, but also we coordinate when they bring potential buyers. They come and visit the college, and this is very critical. But our functions are very different, are complementary, but they are totally different in each other.
So many of the courses that are being offered in the college the students will have access to these new facilities like the new feed mill.
Yeah.
Can you share with us the type of experience that they're going to get?
Well, they are going to actually work with equipment that the industry uses, and they are going to learn not only how the blends are the effect of the different product, but also the safety procedures that are going to be followed, and they are going to learn how different byproducts can be used and the utilization of those byproducts in the industry. So nothing replaces hands-on, and we will have that with the students.
One thing you did bring up earlier in our conversation was Chile. Obviously, such a big part of New Mexico's identity and culture. There have been concerns in that industry in recent years with addressing labor shortages, with addressing competition from Mexico and also other countries as well in the industry. And also, of course, there's water challenges and drought. So what are some of your big concerns with that industry as you have these conversations with farmers in our state?
Well, the major concern is the labor availability.
Yeah.
Because in New Mexico, 10, 15 years ago, the acreage that was planted with chili was in the order of 35,000 acres. Right now, we are in 6,300 acres. But we have large companies using this product, and they are extremely important. So they import some of those chilies for here. So in order to address the issue of labor, we are working in digital agriculture in the college. And digital agriculture is not the solution to all the problems, but it will ameliorate the intensive labor that is used. In Line-Decker, we are working a team from mechanical engineering and plant and environmental sciences in developing some robotics to pick chili.
Mechanized
Mechanize
chili
all
harvesting.
that. So those are some of the things that we are doing. We are investing and going into drone applications in agriculture, and just this last week came out a publication for extension in when and how to use drones in agriculture. And the same thing applies for cattle. How do we identify where the cattle is and if it's healthy or not? And a lot of that is sensor application, digital agriculture.
Speaking of digital agriculture, what about artificial intelligence? There's been a lot of talk about how that's going to incorporate many industries that we deal with on a daily basis. What about agriculture?
Absolutely. About 3 years ago, we had a team of scientists in the college and arts and sciences and engineering that they got together and started working in artificial intelligence in agriculture. And they submitted several grants. They didn't succeed, but by the third time they did it, they succeed. So right now, I can tell you that we are working in digital agriculture, in artificial intelligence in agriculture, because the amount of data that is produced requires all of that.
We're in a state that deals with a lot of poverty, that deals with food insecurity,
Correct.
An issue in our region. Folks in Washington, D.C. have been going back and forth about the Farm Bill and the possibility of what's going to be included in that. And as we talk and have this conversation, what if it's going to be passed anytime? What are your major concerns with the Farm Bill, and how important is it to not only New Mexico State University but our region?
Yeah, well, that is a very critical issue, and it's very saddened that we're going to this stage in this time in the nation with very unproductive results from over there. Our legislators are very conscious of that, and they have been working for toward these issues. I think one of my major concerns, we cannot go into details, but one of my major concerns is that this Farm Bill considers agriculture as we need it and see it in New Mexico, which is very different than how it's seen in the Midwest or in the West or East Coast. So, and I know that our senators and legislators in DC are working toward that. So, and they consult with us and everything. We are extremely pleased with their attitudes.
Well, I know you may not want to mention too much, but obviously water is a major concern. But what other things that can you share with us that make agricultural needs in New Mexico so unique?
Yeah, well, they're so unique is, for example, in terms of carbon management. How do we manage carbon? How that is going to benefit or not? Because it's really extremely important for the health of the planet, the carbon management. Water is one of those. Accessibility for low-income farmers to grants and loans is extremely important. And we are lucky enough that we have a former representative and second in command right now in USDA, Xochitl Torres-Small. So we are at the right time in everything in New Mexico for these things. But water is extremely critical. Availability for markets, and how do we have access? We talk about digital agriculture, but how all the ranchers and farmers in remote areas are going to have access to digital services. That is very important.
All right.
One thing that we just have is right now we are the state that has more weather stations in place operating in the nation.
Climate weather stations.
That's correct.
All right. Dean Rolando Flores Galarza of the College of Aces at NMSU, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
That's it for this week's program. Visit krwg.org anytime for the latest news. You can also email us story ideas or news tips to feedback@nmsu.edu. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time.